autumn. A lot of people don't like autumn because we know what's going to come right after, and that's winter. But autumn also gives us 2-3 months of prime time mushroom foraging. And there is so many mushrooms that end up fruiting come October. This is the middle of September, and I've come out with Chance. He's not exactly a mushroom hunting dog, but it's nice to have some companionship. So, the first one I'm going to show you is the tinder conch. This is a fungus that really is not edible per se, but it is consumable. And by that, what I mean is you can gather these. They're fresh. They cut up very easily. You can dry them out. You can add them to your coffee. You can add them to your smoothies. You can add them to anything once they're dried out and ground into a powder. You can add them into hummus, pesto, whatever. There are so many things. You're only bounded by your imagination. And these contain high concentration, or high concentrations, of many of the B vitamins. This isn't exactly a popular go-to mushroom when people go out foraging, because perhaps they want mushrooms like these, which are Lactarius deliciosa, or deliciosa. There's plenty of these. Okay, there you go, stay there. I should have taken the video when I found the stash of these, but that was way back. These are edible, and you can check my website for any of the mushrooms that are a part of this video. And onward we go. Okay, so I didn't get too far, and I found these guys. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't know what these are. So, like a great episode of Forensic Files, you're going to become the investigator, and you need to gather all the evidence possible before you can even make a determination. A lot of people will simply take a photograph and throw it into Facebook saying, is this edible? In my opinion, this is very irresponsible. You don't want to know if it's edible first. You need to know, what is it? Plain and simply. You need to take time to learn what different mushrooms are if you want to be out here foraging for mushrooms to eat. And in all honesty, there are so many different mushroom varieties, and many of them have lookalikes, and many of them are going to take your life if you make a wrong determination. So a lot of times I would highly suggest, Facebook does have some great pages, and there are some amazing people out there who do know their mushrooms and they know them very well, but don't take one person's word for it. Now, they may steer you in the right direction. They may say it could be in this family, it might be this species, and this is great. This is all part of the evidence that you need to gather to find out if the mushrooms that you have found are indeed safe to consume. So, what other work can you do to figure out if what species and what specific mushroom these are? Well, my first thing I would look at is the substrate. They're not growing out of a tree or the base of the tree. These are growing in the ground. You'd want to do a double check, because in a forest like this, there's a lot of trees that are buried under the earth from years of leaf debris, needle debris, and so therefore some of these mushrooms actually could be growing from wood. So you need to know, what's the substrate, wood or earth? Take note of that. Then you're going to get a little bit closer and you're going to take some samples home. Now, what I've done, I just wanted to cut one sideways so you can see what it looks like. And should you ever use Facebook as a means to try to get identification, don't just take a picture like this and say, can you help me identify this? You need to give the clues. Where was it growing? Does it have gills? Does it have pores? Okay. Now, this one here, what I'm going to do to show you is you take a few samples home and you need to do some spore prints. Is the spore print dark or light or pinkish or ochre? We need to know what color are these spores going to be. And I'm going to take these home and do it and tack it onto the end of this video. So, how do you do a spore print? I have a blog that I wrote quite some time ago that will help instruct you how to do this. And I will put the link below. But in a nutshell, all you do is, I'm going to have to lift this up, hang on. There we go. What you do is you have to cut the stem so you've opened up the area to where the gills or the pores are. And once you get home, you're going to have a white piece and a dark piece of paper. You place it on the paper, put a cup over top or a bowl to make sure that you're sealing in the air so the pores drop. And when you remove that cap, about 4 or 5 hours later, you're going to have a beautiful spore print, not only to help you in identification, but also some pretty funky artwork. Anyway, enough talk about this one, but as I say, I now have to do some investigation to find out what are these guys. And there's Chance being very patient. Okay, so I showed you inside my bag that I had gathered some Lactarius deliciosa, and luckily I've come across another patch. So you can see what they look like as you come along the forest floor. These ones are past their best before date. One thing I was mentioning about gathering your evidence and do mushrooms grow near a tree, also try to take note of what type of trees. Were they conifers? Were they pine? Were they cedar? Or were they deciduous? It's not always easy to tell when you have something like this that's been down for quite some time, but that's okay. There are other trees. You're going to look up, and there's hemlock, there's maple, there's birch, a mixed variety here. Okay, so what I want to do is also show you how to take a mushroom. We want to make sure that we're not disrupting the ground when we're removing mushrooms. A lot of people just rip them out, and what you're doing in that process is you're harming the mycelium that is underneath the soil here. Mycelium is critical to trees, as trees are to it. And there are truly, underneath this forest, probably millions of kilometers or millions of miles of mycelium. I'm in a huge forest, and it is everywhere. You don't see it, but it is down there. From the mycelium, the mushrooms fruit, just like an apple tree. You pick an apple, the tree will stay there. So you pick a mushroom, the mycelium will still be there if you have used a knife. Check that out. There we go. So I'm just going to gather a few more that are in this area and then move right along. Now this one is the birch polypore. It, like the tinder conch, is a consumable fungi, but not necessarily edible. When you get these small enough and young enough, you actually could cut them very thin and fry them up. They taste incredible. and like the tinder conch, loaded with minerals and lots of constituents. Something that is really important to keep our immune system running at 100%. The way to, let's see, I'm on a hill, so this isn't going to work too well. There we go. Again, I'm going to use my knife. Now this is an older sample, and the color will tell you. Look at that, beautiful, beautiful, pure white. So this is coming home. At home right now, I have a whole bunch of these sitting in my dehydrator, and as soon as they're fully dried out, I grind them down to a powder and they get added into anything and everything in my kitchen. There we go. Now I want to show you this. There's a lot of white mushrooms, far too many white ones. And if you are at the beginning stages, I would highly recommend stick to more identifiable mushrooms, because there's so many out here, so many that look like another type of mushroom. It's not like eating the wrong plant and then you end up in a merge. Yeah, you could end up with being in a merge if you eat the wrong mushroom, but you could also end up in a coffin. You don't want that. This is a very fun autumn activity or year-round activity depending on where you live. You just don't want to make any mistakes. And there's certain mushrooms, even when I do my plant walks or my nature walks, I will not talk about some mushrooms even though I know what they are, because there's so many different could be what ifs, the spore prints, things like this, and I don't want a lawsuit. So I like to take a lot of precautions. And onward we go. These are not edible, obviously. These once were either the gem-studded puffball or the pestle puffball. One thing's for sure, it had a good life. And sometimes what's really cool to do is when you see these puffballs that have opened up, you know their spores are being released, give it a little help. There you go. These ones, in all honesty, I don't know their identity. And maybe one day I'll actually take the time to figure out what are they. However, one thing I do know is that they're not edible. The vast majority of these small yellow mushrooms are not edible. Along the pathway of foraging mushrooms, you've probably heard or you've probably read somewhere somebody referring to LBMs, little brown mushrooms, and to stay away from the LBMs. I would also highly recommend that you stay away from the LYMs. And there's also some orange, actually quite a few orange small mushrooms. They're not here yet. And I would stay away from those as well. For example, two of them in the orange color category, they are very small. One is the deadly court, or courtnaris. And you know what that is by its name. You don't want to eat it. And here are a couple of LOMs, little orange mushrooms. As I just mentioned, there is the deadly courtnaris. This is not them, I know that. But again, if you're trying to get an exact identification spore print, what's its substrate? There are a lot of little orange mushrooms that grow from the earth. But of course, there's also the different varieties that grow from trees. But if you're watching this because you want to learn more about edible mushrooms, then my best advice to you, that's a funky tree right there. My best advice to you is just stay away from the little orange mushrooms, the little yellow mushrooms, and the little brown mushrooms. Resinous polypore, or late autumn polypore. These are really common in the Northeast. These are consumable. And it's kind of early in the season actually. But this here just seems to be a bumper crop of mushrooms. There we go, check that out. Look at that. Now let's see if I can do that. Hang on. I'm gonna grab my knife. These, although edible, I'm pretty creative in the kitchen. I've come up with all sorts of recipes that are one of a kind. The first of, I have the Foraging cookbook that was published by Callisto Media in July 2020. Can I find any useful foods to add this in or to create? Not really. It's one of these ones that I just do not find desirable. Now, at this stage, let's see if I can, hang on. Sorry about that, jumping around. So, at this stage, it's actually not that bad. However, the bigger these get, they are loaded with water. And when you try to cut it, it just oozes so much moisture. So unless you really get these at a very young age, like this one, I don't know. Well, maybe your taste buds will enjoy it. Maybe you'll find some amazing uses for it. And if you do, please, please let me know. However, as I mentioned, these are very common. They like to grow on dead deciduous trees. So there we go. And then we got some in there. No shortage of them. There we go. And that's also another tip for foraging with mushrooms. Look around the entire log. If you have a down log, look on both sides, because you just never know what could be on the other side. Now, I haven't done that yet myself. See, there's another new one growing. And I think I'll wrap it up for now. I really hope you enjoyed this introduction to mushroom foraging. And if you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to like it. And if you're interested in autumn mushrooms, I have a PDF that I sell on the store page. I'll provide the link below. And it's called 101 Autumn Mushrooms. They're not all edible, but it is certainly filled with great photography, and it includes mushrooms that are found anywhere from August right through into December. So I thank each and every one of you for sticking it out to the end and watching this video. I truly appreciate it. And Chance thanks you too. He's resting again. There he is. And happy foraging. Be safe. And don't get too excited when you find something and you think it might be an edible mushroom. Always take your time. It is so important. Identification is exceedingly important when mushroom foraging. Thank you.